Hey, what's up guys, it's Tech talking to you here, and in today's video I want to review the Sony A6700. This has been my main camera and my main focus of the last month or the last few weeks, let's just say that. All the videos on my channel have been shot with this camera. This video is a total sample for this camera because it's being shot with this camera is using the 15mm G lens from the APS-C lineup. This is an f1.4 lens, it's a 15mm. So this is the best lens in my opinion for this Sony camera for shooting video. So let me know in the comments below, how do you think it looks? I think it looks pretty great. But this camera is way more than a video camera. This camera is a hybrid camera. So if you want to know more details on the photography side and still on the video side, what things are better, what things could be better, and what things should you watch out if you want to buy this camera, or should you buy the Sony ZV-E1, or just wait a bit and buy the Sony Alpha 7C. So let me know in the comments below what you think about the Sony A6700. No further ado, don't forget to drop a like down below, subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys for watching. Roll the intro. So the Sony A6700 is a really good camera. Like, it's really good. Every camera on the market right now has a good image or good color science, but this camera combines it all. It's cheap. It's really good in terms of color science. The autofocus is the best on the market, has tons and tons of features, 4K, 120 frames per second, tons of lens compatibility. It's perfect. And still really cheap, like $1,200, $1,300, depending on where you find it. So this camera has lots of potential to be the best value camera on the market right now. Although it's not a full frame lens, it's an APS-C sensor, this sensor is still really crisp and really good. Can still create this natural bokeh behind me, can still create amazing shots. And unless I put it side by side with a full frame sensor with crops like 1000x, you won't notice the differences between the APS-C sensor and a full frame sensor if I'm not looking for it. So I think it's a really good way to save on money and still buy good lenses for your camera. Because at the end of the day, I will review this camera and talk about all the features that is good and bad, but the thing that matters the most for your image quality and your picture quality is the lenses. So I think that the lenses are way more important, and for my camera I chose two lenses and I made a video about that. Why did I choose these two lenses? So go check it out on my channel. But to summarize it, I chose the 18 by 105 lens. This is a power zoom lens, so it's almost like a telephoto. It's equivalent of a 18, so it's a 28 to 130 in full frame. It's a really good lens. It's really versatile. It's an f4, so it's not the brightest lens, but still really good. I took amazing shots with this lens on Las Vegas. I can take amazing shots, portrait modes here. It's really good lens if you want to have a photography lens for your Sony A6700. And for my video lens, of course, I chose the Sony 15mm that you are watching this video right now. This is the 15mm G lens with the f1.4, creates this amazing background blur, and also, like you can see, creates this amazing aspect ratio and this focal lens, which is equivalent to a 22mm lens. So it's the perfect lens for talking head shots, just like this. But this video is not focused on the lenses itself. I have more videos than that. No, this video is focused on the body of the Sony A6700 itself and the combination with these two lenses. And this body has much to offer. This body is based on the Sony A6000 series. So again, it's a really well-known body that you probably know how it feels and how it looks. But with a big trick, it's bigger and more voluminous, just by a tiny bit. But the volume actually comes through the grip, so it's much more comfortable to hold and much better. Trust me, I've held other Sony A6000 series cameras and this one feels much more comfortable in the hand for holding and shooting photos for a long period of time. For those that shoot weddings and long time like work, this is really important. So the Sony A6700 comfort and premium feeling, it's known, but it's familiar, but I think it's better than the older generations. Of course, it might vary if you have a very big hand or a very small hand, but at the end of the day, I think for the most amount of people, this camera will be more than comfortable than you actually need. So I've been very happy with this camera in terms of comfort, build quality. This camera on the body has several customizable buttons, has 3 I think, 1, 2 and 3, the third being the trash button. Then it has so many attachment points for your strings. It has 2, which are kind of annoying. These 2 are annoying when you are like shooting vlogs and they will clap on the sides and make noise and disturb your audio. You have to have an external audio mic for that. And of course, it has way more, like it has one customizable dial where I put my shutter speed. Then it has one SD card slot only. It doesn't have two for your backup, so that might be a very big deal breaker for you. And it has one headphone jack to connect your external mic or your headphones. And then it has USB-C. USB-C is really cool. You can use USB-C to connect it to your computer, use it as an external webcam or live streams at 4K 30 frames per second. So in terms of I/O, in terms of body, in terms of ports, this camera is brand new, top of the lineup from Sony lineup. Feels more like the newer Sonys. It's cheap, yes, $1,200, compared to other Sony cameras like the Sony A7 IV or the Sony A7 V or R5 or A7S III. This camera feels a little bit cheaper, but those cameras cost like double the money. So I understand why. Does it feel a bit cheaper? But it's still made of magnesium alloy, aluminum, so feels really good. As for the lenses, the 18-105 lens feels about like less premium a bit than the 15mm. This one is, I think, made of aluminum, while the 15mm is still made from the same magnesium alloy that is made, the Sony A6700. So I think that this camera, for what it is really good. This camera also features a viewfinder, electronic viewfinder, which these days is actually pretty rare. And of course, the display is really good. This is the same display found on the Sony A7 IV. It's not the sharpest nor the brightest, but it's more than enough to check out your focus, your lighting, everything that you need. This display can also flip to the side instead of flipping up like the older models, so you can check yourself while you are filming yourself. The sensor of this camera though is a APS-C sensor, and I've discussed that on this video already, so I won't lose that much time. But what it means is like it's a 1.5 crop on top of a full frame sensor. And that's because of the full frame sensor being 1.5 times bigger than this APS-C sensor. And that actually confuses a lot of people, because lots of people buy APS-C cameras thinking when they buy a 15mm lens that they will have a 15mm full frame equivalent shot. And that's wrong, because you will have an equivalent of 23mm, so it will be more cropped in. Although APS-C lenses could be also used for cropping in on a shot without needing to buy very long lenses. So if you need to have sports photography or very long and far away shots, maybe a APS-C sensor is better for that way. But still, I think full frame is always better in every single situation, but much more of the time is much more expensive. And I think for most people, it's not worth it. So if you are a small YouTuber, an inspiring filmmaker, and you want to start your journey, an APS-C sensor, I think it's the perfect choice for you. All the lenses for this sensor are much cheaper. Trust me, a 15mm lens like this G lens, should cost around $1,200 to $1,300 on the full frame side. It cost me $600, so half the price. While this 18-105 lens, this zoom lens, should cost around $600-700, $800, let's just say that, from Sony. For the full frame lenses, this being an APS-C, costs $300, $350 that I bought it for. So as you can see, the lenses are really cheaper when compared to the full frame side. So if you want to buy as ecosystem for your camera, then choosing APS-C for starting is much better. Then there's also the fact that choosing APS-C lineup will make your bag, your hardware, everything much smaller and much more compact. So if you are moving around, if you need more space than you actually have on your bag, maybe choosing this camera is better, because the camera body will be smaller, the camera lenses will be smaller, and they can shoot further than the normal full frames, because the lenses are smaller, but they can still shoot really far because of the 1.5 crop. So if you are looking for a camera that can shoot really far, but it's on the smallest form factor possible, then the APS-C Sony A6700, the hybrid camera, the newest one on the market, is the choice for you. But now you are asking yourself, what about photography? What about video? Let's cover that in a bit. This camera is an hybrid camera, so you can do photography and video really well. It's adapted to create both form factors. While the Sony EZ-V1 is made only for video, especially for video, and the Sony A7 R5 is also focused on the photography. No, this camera is more of an hybrid, closer to the Sony A7 IV. This is an hybrid camera, so it can do both really well. It's not the perfect at both, like it's not the best on the video side, and it is not the best on the photography side. But it combines all these traits into a camera that is really compact, really small, cheap, and really good for beginners or for people that want to be roll camera. The battery life on this camera is mid. It's not as good as I was thinking, but it's not as bad as some people make it out to be. Because the battery life here is around, I would say, 1 hour if you are recording at 4K 30 frames per second. Right now, I've recorded about 20 minutes and I've wasted for about 20%. So if it's 100%, then 100 minutes at 4K 30 frames per second, which will equivalent to about 1 hour and 40 minutes. So yeah, maybe I'm doing the math wrong, but expect from 1 hour to 2 hours of video recording. As for photos, it will last you, I don't know, always. I never ran out of battery when shooting photos. While shooting video, I've ran out of sometimes. So it's Z batteries from the Sony lineup. The Z batteries are the best ones, but still, you cannot do miracles with this body. Like when it overheats, it wastes battery. When it's video recording, it wastes a bit more battery than usual because, I mean, it's 4K, 30 frames per second. This body cannot cool itself, so it runs a bit hot when recording video, and then the battery life is not as good. But I think it will be more than enough for most people. So let me know in the comments below what you think about the battery life of the Sony A6700. So I think that the Sony A6700 does this job really, really well. Starting on the photography side, this camera has incredible color science, incredible autofocus, can detect humans, can detect cars, can detect birds, can detect planes, can detect different types of humans, different types of birds and animals. This camera autofocus is insane. And for wildlife photographers or sports photographers or very fast-moving photographers, this camera is really, really good. It also has a really good advantage over other cameras. Being an APS-C lineup, like I told you, can crop in 1.5 times on its lens. So if you have full-frame lenses, like a 15mm, it will be equivalent to a 70mm or 75mm lens on the APS-C lineup and on the Sony 6700. So your lens, a 15mm, which is normally not that much expensive, will be equivalent to a portrait lens where you can take amazing shots with amazing bokeh. Though this camera cannot create that feeling of using a full frame because the low light performance is not as good. So if you are focused on taking astrophotography shots or low light photography, then this camera is not the best. Although I've taken amazing astrophotography shots with this camera, it's also really good if you give it the time, give it the speed or the shutter speed, and give it really, really dark places without any light pollution. But still, I think like a full frame sensor camera would be better for that job. And you have the Sony A7 IV or the Sony A7C for that. And that's something I want to discuss. Because if you want to buy a hybrid camera with really good photography, you only have 3 options. The A7C, the A7 IV, and now the Sony A6700. The first 2 are full frame lenses. The third is an APS-C. And now this enters the fact that I want you, the beginner, to look at yourself and think, do I have $3,000 to spend to buy a full frame lens, or do I want to spend $2,000, save that 1,000 grand, invest it on somewhere, and start learning with a new camera? I think you would choose the latter, not the first, because you would be better off saving those $1,000 and putting it towards your education, towards, I don't know, courses online on how to photograph or take photography or take videos. Then it will be better than to buy a full frame because you probably won't know how to use a full frame and you won't benefit of having a full frame. So in terms of photography, I take all my thumbnails with this camera. I took an amazing trip to Las Vegas where I tried the Vegas loop. Go check out my video and review on that. And I've taken amazing photos of the Grand Canyon, which is amazing. It's beautiful, beautiful place. I've taken incredible photos with my Sony A6700. I also went at night, take some photos at those amazing casinos and very lit streets of Las Vegas. That's why they are known. And I've got incredible results. So I think that the photography side on this camera, for you that are mainly a video user, but you want to also explore the photography side, this camera is perfect for that. While the Sony CVE1 is a really good video camera, but on the photo side, it lacks a bit. Because this camera features a mechanical shutter, the Sony ZVE1 or ZVE10, that's the APS-C lineup, the ZVE1 is the full frame equivalent. So the Sony ZVE10 does not have a mechanical shutter, so for fast-moving subjects or for low light performance, it's not as good because not having a mechanical shutter, it cannot shut itself, so it's more like a video camera. It's always recording and then taking a frame out of the video. Then you will have those light pollutions on your photos if you move around or you are in a very poorly lit condition. So as for photography, I think that this is the best option if you are looking for a photographer and a video camera first. So as an hybrid camera, this is the perfect, cheap hybrid camera. While for video, this one is not the best, not near close, because one, it overheats at 4K 220 frames per second. 2, like the 4K 60 frames per second, you can only record for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And 3, there are much better options for that, like the Sony EZV-1, which is a full frame lens, costs about $2,000, and it's really, really good. The Sony A7C, which has the same sensor as the Sony A700 III, which can record up to 4K 30 frames per second, but is really, really good. You cannot do 4K at 60 frames per second or 4K 120, just like the Sony A6700, but the video quality, I think it's better because of the full frame sensor. While the Sony A7 IV, I think it's a better option overall. It's a better photography camera, it's a better video camera than this one, but is much, much more expensive. While the Sony ZV-1, I mean, it's a really good video camera, has the product showcase mode, has the same AI features. This camera is insane AI features. Like, the autofocus here is insane. Right now it's on to focus my eye, it's locking in on my eye, and I can move close this lens, and it only focuses if I can cover my face. If I cover my face and move it to the side, you can see it's completely out of focus. But if I went to focus again, cover up my face, then there it goes. It finds the lenses and locks in on the lenses. Autofocus here is really, really fast. Insane. Look at it. I don't know what to tell you. It's the best autofocus on the market. And that to video creators is really, really important. Because you need to have reliable autofocus, reliable auto white balance, and reliable video shooting. You cannot have overheating, trash white balance, and trash autofocus. Because if you do, then your video will be ruined. So, in terms of video, if you want to do talking head shots just like this camera is good enough, way more than good enough. It's amazing. You can see, like, it's really good quality. It's way better than a smartphone, than an iPhone or other cameras. But if you want long-lasting 120 frames per second 4K video, this not might be for you. If you want to focus on a cinema lineup, then I would go for the Sony FX30. That camera is much, much better for focusing on video. This one, it's the same sensor, but is optimized with a bigger cage, with internal cooling, better for video, worse for photography because it doesn't feature the mechanical shutter that the Sony A6700 from the APS-C lineup features. The Sony FX30 is also an APS-C sensor. It's the same about this one, but it's better for video, worse for photography. So this camera is more balanced. It is not as good in video, much better on photography, so it balances out on the scale. If you need a better video camera, then the Sony FX30 is for you. If you need a better photography camera, then I would buy maybe a full-frame Sony A700 III, because that camera is cheap. It has the same sensor as the Sony A7C, and it has better option, better build quality, better customizable buttons, better body. It's cheap right now. It costs about the same as the Sony A6700, so that would be a good option. While if you want the best of both worlds, then going for the Sony A6700 might be the perfect choice. This camera is cheap enough, it's good enough, the build quality is amazing, the sensor is incredible. This APS-C sensor produces incredible images, the lenses are cheaper, the ecosystem for this camera is cheaper, and one last thing. This camera is incredibly light and small, which probably right now watching this video, you won't give that much importance to that. If you live with a camera, you take it every day, everywhere, then you will start to notice the size and the weight of the equipment you carry. For example, my 16-inch MacBook Pro, it's all fun in games and I love that computer, but every day that I carry it, I think, oh my god, this thing is heavy as hell. And I've tried the M2 MacBook Air 15-inch. That computer was not as good, the screen was worse. But there was something about the weight and the thinness of that computer that made me actually love it. So, at the end of the day, I think that if you don't need the best camera in photography or video, but you need a really good camera at both, and you need a really, really easy to use, reliable system like the Sony one, then the Sony A6700 is for you. This camera is best of both worlds. Good photography, good video, good autofocus, good color science, good build quality, amazing lens selection. Like you can buy Sony lenses, you can buy Vixar lenses, you can buy Sigma lenses. There's so many options. The Tamron lenses are also really good that are cheap for this APS-C lineup. So let me know in the comments down below what you think about the Sony A6700. Will you buy one? Do you have one? Did you buy one? And do you like APS-C cameras, or do you prefer full frame and you don't think that the APS-C lineup has a future? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. While you're there, do not forget to drop back down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching. This is me, Texmer, talking to you here. Bye bye.